everyone, Chris here, and welcome to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to talk to you about the books I read between December 28th and January 3rd. First up, I read The Third Door by Emily Rhoda, and I gave this book 3.75 stars. This is the third book in the Three Doors trilogy, and in this series, we're following Rye, who lives in the town of Weld. And every night in the town of Weld, they are attacked by these creatures known as skimmers. And the leader of Weld basically puts up his daughter's hand in marriage for anybody who can go and take care of these monsters that are attacking the town every night. So first, Rye's oldest brother goes off, and then his second oldest brother goes off, but neither of them return. So Rye decides to go after them because he and his mom really need his brothers back. And he finds out that there are 3 doors that can lead you out of the city of Weld. And instead of going to the door he is drawn to, he goes through first the door that he believes his oldest brother would have taken in the first book, and then the door he believes his second oldest brother would have taken in the second book. And then in this book, he goes through the door he's been drawn to the whole time. I really enjoyed this book. I was surprised by a lot of the twists that happened in this book. So this book is essentially wrapping up the series, and you kind of knew from day one that he was going to end up going through this door. Because the series is called the Three Doors trilogy, so with there being 3 doors, you kind of assumed he would eventually end up going through this one. And oh my god, it was a solid 3 stars, and I didn't think it was going to get much higher until the twist started happening. I swear, this book zigged every time I thought it would zag, and zag every time I thought it would zig. It literally flipped everything on its head at the end, and just blew my mind because I did not see any of these twists coming, and yet in hindsight I really should have. So I ended up really enjoying the series. I don't know if it's one I would reread, but I definitely had a good time reading it, and if it sounds interesting, I would recommend you check it out because it ended up being a pretty decent series in my opinion. Next up, I read The Cottingley Secret by Hazel Gaynor, and I gave this book 4.25 stars. This book fulfilled the prompt longest book on my TBR for Phase Chen Chooses My TBR. So I'm not going to tell you anything about this book because it is one of my fall covers. If you don't know what my fall covers is, I'll link the video in the description below, but basically I picked 5 books on my shelves whose covers reminded me of fall, explained why they reminded me of that season, and then went into them blind to see if they actually took place in that season. So you will get to hear what this book is about in my fall covers wrap up. Next up, I read Daughter of the Deep by Rick Riordan, and I gave this book 4.75 stars. This book fulfilled the prompt dad pick for Phase 10 Chooses My TBR, and retellings for Mary Bookmas. So this is a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea retelling, and in this book we're following Anna Dakar, who attends Harding Pencraft Academy. This is a school that caters to the best marine scientists, naval warriors, navigators, and underwater explorers in the world. 2 years ago, Anna's parents ended up dying, so now it's just her and her older brother. For the culmination of her freshman year, she and the rest of her classmates go on a weekend excursion. This excursion happens at sea and is somewhat of tradition, and none of the older students will tell Anna or her class what to expect. She's really nervous and hopes that she can handle whatever is thrown at her. But on the ride of the ship, her and her classmates see something that changes everything. The teacher on the trip then informs her and her classmates that their school and another school have been at war for 150 years. And now Anna and her classmates are at the center of it. So I really enjoyed this book. I was very curious going into this how they were going to make this a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea retelling, and I thought it was quite interesting how they managed to pull that off. I'm really glad I read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea before I read this, although there is a second novel that I wished I had read by Jules Verne. So it's based on 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and another novel that is following Captain Nemo, who is one of the characters we follow in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And I wish I had read that one too, because I think it would have enriched the world of Daughter of the Deep even more. The reason this didn't get 5 stars is because I believe this is a standalone, and there were a few things that happened at the end that didn't wrap up the way I wanted them to, or really feel like they wrapped up at all. They kind of felt like loose ends, and that bothered me. I'm pretty sure I've heard Rick say this is a standalone. If it's not a standalone, then I probably would have given this 5 stars. But there's just a few minor things at the end that I wasn't really thrilled with, hence the 4.75 star rating. Either way, I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was quite fast-paced and really sucked you into what was going on in the mystery and wanting to go on this adventure with Anna and her classmates and get to the bottom of everything. I really enjoyed Anna as a character and getting to see the struggles she was going through as she tried to handle everything that was being thrown at her. And I just really enjoyed this novel and would highly recommend it. Next up, I read Paper Girls Volume 2 by Brian K. Vaughan, and I gave this book 3.5 stars. This book fulfilled the prompt second chance for Mary Bookmiss. In this series, we're following 4 12-year-old paper girls who are out on the morning of Halloween in 1988 delivering papers. Crazy things end up happening and the girls' lives are turned upside down. So this volume continues where the last volume left off. And the reason I did this for second chance was because I wasn't sure I wanted to continue on with the series. So basically, I gave the series a second chance, and I enjoyed this one enough that I think I will continue on with the series when I'm looking for a quick read, because they're graphic novels, so they're a rather quick read, and I care enough to wonder what is going to happen next. They aren't my favorite, but this volume definitely made me care a little bit more about the characters and what is going on, and I definitely want to check out Volume 3 to find out what happens next. So I'm really glad I gave the series a second chance. Next up, I read A Shadow in River Clan by Erin Hunter, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. This book fulfilled the prompt Water on the Cover for Phase 10 Chooses My TBR, and a book that will make you happy for Be Sure-a-thon. So this is a graphic novel in the Warriors series, and if you're new to my channel, Warriors is a series about forest cats that live in clans and have to try to coexist. This novel takes place between the first arc and the second arc. So if you're trying to figure out when you should read it, you can read it at any point after you've read the first arc. And I really enjoyed this, especially knowing what was going to happen to these characters, because obviously I'm in arc 7, so I know what happens after the events of this book. So it was super interesting to see what happened to these characters in this novel when you know where the larger story is going. And I definitely enjoyed this book, and it did make me happy to read because I love Warriors books, but it wasn't the happiest book. The character that we're following in this is going through a tough time, and I thought that the Aarons did a great job of bringing that to the forefront and really allowing us to emotionally connect with our main character and the struggles they are going through. I thought this was a fantastic addition to the series and definitely will make things interesting if I ever do a reread, because I now have a better understanding of the character this book follows, and it definitely makes me see things that happen to this character in future books in a different light. So I'm really glad I read it, and I'm really glad they've added this as an addition to the series. Next up, I read The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. This book fulfilled the prompt Young Adult for Phase 10 Chooses My TBR, and anticipated read for Be Sure-a-thon. So in this book, we're following a teen named Avery who is living with her half-sister after her mom died. They share a dad, and he's kind of not in the picture, so her older sister is kind of responsible for her. One day, she is called to the principal's office and has no idea what is going on, but has been informed that a billionaire named Tobias Hawthorne has left her something in his will, and when she goes to the reading of the will, she finds out that she has inherited a majority of his estate. There's a catch, though. She has to live in his house for the next year. That's all well and good, but she's going to be living in that house with his 4 grandsons and his 2 daughters, of which he's basically just completely disinherited. Grayson, who is the heir apparent, is determined to prove that Avery is some calm woman who convinced his grandfather to leave her his fortune and tried to cheat him out of his money. Jameson, who knows his grandfather's love of puzzles, assumes Avery is just the last puzzle his grandfather left them to play. All of them, including Avery though, are wondering why Tobias decided to leave his entire fortune to a girl he never met, as far as anyone can tell. So Avery decides she has to play along if she's ever going to get to the bottom of why Tobias left his fortune to her, even though it means dealing with the danger and living with people who have plenty of reasons to not want her around. I thought this book was super intriguing. I loved the mystery. I loved wondering why Tobias left his fortune to Avery, and I love how each of his 4 grandsons has a very different personality and how they all play into the larger story. I really liked seeing Avery because she was really struggling with all of this. Like, her life had completely changed and she'd had this plan, and now all of a sudden her plan has completely changed and she's trying to figure out, was there something my mom didn't tell me? Is this somehow connected to my dad? Why did this man decide to disinherit his entire family and leave his fortune to me? And I thought it was very well written, and I was intrigued from the word go. And I didn't want to put it down once I picked it up, and I cannot wait to read book 2 because I want to know what happens next. So I really enjoyed this book, and I'm looking forward to reading more books in this series. And lastly, I read Darkness Within by Aaron Hunter, and I gave this book 5 stars. This is the 4th book in the 7th arc of 6 in the Warrior series. And what is it with the cliffhangers in this arc? Every single book in this arc so far has left me going, can I pick up the next book now? Please? Like, forget my TBR. It's fine. I can totally just completely forget my TBR and just read this arc. And that is all I've wanted to do since the end of book 1. This arc has been so brilliantly written, and I think it might end up being my favorite arc of the entire series, unless something wonky goes on with books 5 and 6, because it's just been brilliant. I am so intrigued, and once I pick these books up, I don't want to put them down, and I need to know what happens next. I really love the new characters we've met in this arc. I've grown really, really attached to them, and so scared that they're not going to make it out of this crazy story intact, which is always a fear in these books because you never know who's going to live and who's going to die, because they're forest cats. They fight, so sometimes not everybody makes it. And I'm just really, really enjoying this arc, and I cannot wait to read books 5 and 6 and find out how this arc concludes. So these are some of the books I read between December 28th and January 3rd. All of my social media, including my Discord, is linked in the description below if you'd like to chat with me about any of these. If you've made it this far in the video, leave me paper emojis, like this video, and subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!